Here are 8 factors that could be contributing to or even causing your fatigue. I'm Jennifer, an integrative healing practitioner. If you are tired all the time, it really affects your mood, mental health, memory, and general ability to function properly. I have been so chronically fatigued that I would frequently struggle to stay awake while driving. And that is pretty scary, isn't it? It turns out that there are so many factors that can cause fatigue, and it's often not just one factor. It's important to look at the body as a whole because our body is interconnected. One imbalance, such as a thyroid imbalance, can lead to another imbalance, like a neurotransmitter imbalance, that affects the levels of serotonin and dopamine in our body. Speaking of the thyroid, that brings me to factor number 1, thyroid imbalance. I used to think it was my thyroid causing my fatigue, since fatigue is a common symptom of thyroid imbalance. Just in case you're wondering, if you're not familiar with the thyroid, it's a small butterfly-shaped gland that's located at the front of our neck. It uses iodine from food that we eat to produce hormones that regulate how our body uses energy. If these hormones also control our breathing, heart rate, digestion, and even our mood. If our thyroid produces too much or too little hormone, it will affect our health. So I was convinced that my fatigue was due to a thyroid imbalance. However, whenever I went to the doctor and got my blood work done, my levels would show up as normal. But now I know that even if the doctor says your thyroid is normal, it might not be functioning optimally. The normal range that most doctors use is a wider range than what is considered an optimal range. So not only is it important to look at optimal ranges, but it's also crucial to run a full thyroid panel. A full panel includes TSH, total T3 and T4, free T3 and T4, reverse T3, TPO, and TPG. Many doctors don't run a full thyroid panel and therefore miss important information. Running a full thyroid panel is essential to getting a complete picture of how our thyroid is functioning. If you're only looking at TSH, which many doctors do, it provides only a partial picture of how the thyroid is functioning. TSH reflects how the brain is communicating with the thyroid, but it doesn't reveal how well the thyroid is converting or utilizing the hormones it produces. Okay, factor number 2, nutrient deficiencies. Looking to see which nutrients you're deficient in is also important. How is your diet? Are you eating mostly processed foods? Are you cutting out important macronutrients in your diet, like carbs or protein? If your body isn't getting what it needs, it will contribute to fatigue. It's important to eat a mostly whole food, real foods diet. So foods like fruits and veggies, well-sourced meats, dairy, eggs, and well-sourced grains. And if some of those foods are causing inflammation or other symptoms, it's often because your body is out of balance. And once you work on the imbalances, oftentimes those foods can be added back in with no symptoms. Going on restrictive diets can help with symptoms in the short term, but often have long-term health effects and can actually cause more damage and imbalance in the long run. Running tests like a full panel blood work and an organic acids test reveal important nutritional markers, including vitamins D3, B12, B6, and iron. These tests provide insights into how your body metabolizes macronutrients, such as carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Factor number 3, depression and anxiety. Depression and anxiety go hand in hand with fatigue, and they can often feed off of each other, creating a vicious cycle. If we're fatigued, we don't have the energy to do things that we need to do, and we start to feel depressed and then anxious that we're not able to get everything accomplished. On the other hand, if we're depressed, that can affect our energy level and cause fatigue. If our cortisol is spiked all the time because we're dealing with anxiety and stress, we will eventually crash and feel fatigued. So what is cortisol, and what does it have to do with fatigue? Today in our modern world, most of us are busy and stressed way more than our bodies are meant to handle. Being in that state activates the release of cortisol. Cortisol is known as our stress hormone. It's meant to keep us alive when we're in a fight or flight situation. But the problem is when we're stressed a lot and then cortisol is being released way more than it should be. And that can lead to fatigue as well as inflammation and other health issues. So this brings me to the next possible cause for fatigue. Factor number 4, circadian rhythm. If you're going to bed really late and waking up late, your circadian rhythm will be off and your cortisol will spike when it's not supposed to, which can cause late afternoon fatigue. The Dutch test shows your circadian rhythm and you can see if cortisol has spiked where it shouldn't. Our cortisol is meant to be higher in the morning when we wake up so that we have energy to start the day and get things done. And then it starts to slowly decrease as the day goes on. And at night, it should be at its lowest, and that's when melatonin kicks in order to prepare our body for sleep. So it's important to follow your circadian rhythm, if possible, by waking up between 6 to 8 a.m. and going to bed usually between 10 to 12 to avoid your cortisol spiking when it shouldn't and leading to fatigue. All right, factor number 5. Neurotransmitter imbalance. Another big cause for fatigue is neurotransmitter imbalance. I mentioned neurotransmitters before, but let me explain it a little bit more. Our neurotransmitters are our body's chemical messengers. So they transmit messages in our brain and nervous system. These messages help control everything from our mood and emotions to our heartbeat and breathing. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that helps regulate our mood and sleep, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is involved in feelings of pleasure and reward, and also motivation and drive. Since dopamine helps with drive, motivation, and focus, if our dopamine is low, that can cause fatigue. If you have low serotonin, that can contribute to a depressed and low energy feeling as well. Factor number 6, mitochondrial dysfunction. Our mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells, which provide energy for our cells. If our mitochondria aren't functioning properly due to things like exposure to toxins, chemicals, certain drugs and medications, aging, genetic mutations, and nutrient deficiencies, for example, that can lead to fatigue. By running an organic acids test, we can get a picture of how our mitochondria are functioning. And there are things that we can do and supplements we can take to improve the health of our mitochondria. Factor number 7, hormonal and adrenal imbalances. Our sex hormones play a role in our mental health, fatigue, cognition, and sleep. If our sex hormones are out of balance, it can lead to not only fatigue, but also depression, anxiety, memory issues, sleep disturbances, and more. Fluctuations in estrogen and progesterone during menstrual cycles, pregnancy, perimenopause, or menopause can cause fatigue and mood swings. Low testosterone for both men and women can lead to decreased energy and motivation. Factors like stress, diet, toxin, chemical exposure, and lack of sleep can all lead to or exacerbate your hormonal imbalance. So it's important to run a Dutch test to get a full picture of what's going on with your hormones. The Dutch test will also show how your adrenals are functioning. Our adrenals affect not only our energy level, but also metabolism, blood pressure, immune system function, cognitive function, and more. If you're chronically stressed and your adrenal glands are producing a lot of cortisol, that can lead to adrenal fatigue. This can show up as fatigue as well as lack of energy, difficulty waking up in the morning, and dizziness. Knowing how your hormones and adrenals are functioning and then implementing the support needed to balance them is an important part of addressing fatigue and other health issues. Factor number 8, chemicals, toxins, and pathogens. Another thing that we often don't think about is the chemicals and toxins that we're exposed to on a daily basis. in our food, water, cleaning products, personal care products. So it's really important to limit the amount of chemicals and toxins our body is exposed to. If we have more of a toxic load than our body can handle, and our liver is constantly working to detoxify everything, it will stress our body. As a result, our body may not be able to handle detoxifying everything, which can lead to fatigue and other various health issues. Things like mold exposure, Lyme, and overgrowth of yeast or bacteria and other pathogens in the gut could be factoring into your fatigue as well. All of these things can be taking away resources from your body, causing nutrient deficiencies, inflammation, and other issues that result in fatigue as well as other symptoms. The Para-Wellness tests and GI map tests for parasites, protozoa, bacteria, and yeast. I'm sure you can see how important it is to take a whole body approach when looking for the root causes of fatigue, running the proper tests so that you're not just guessing, and getting the right support according to your own test results. If you want to get to the root causes of your fatigue and you're looking for a practitioner, you can sign up for a free 20-minute health assessment by going to holisticwellbeingih.com.